Hey, Gary, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good. How are you, David?
I'm doing okay. I guess to start, for those in our audience who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? How'd you find yourself getting into politics? Now running for a U.S. Senate seat in Louisiana.
So I was a small business owner with two of my friends. We started a company called the Rouge Collection media platform here in Baton Rouge, and we were just trying to be a hip version of another platform here in the city. There were things happening around the country. Trayvon Martin happened in Florida, Mike Brown in Missouri. These things impacted me as a young black man, and so I had a media platform. When Trayvon was killed, I wrote a column. When Mike Brown was killed, I held my first town hall. Maybe 20 people showed up. And then there was a brother named Lamar Johnson here in Baton Rouge who was pulled over by the police in Baker. He has a traffic stop. He goes to parish prison, and they say he hung himself. And this is like 3 weeks before Sandra Bland. His family reaches out. I write a column about it. 40,000 people read that column. A few months later, our district attorney here in Baton Rouge was attempting to open a misdemeanor jail to round up people who had simple traffic violations and bench warrants and put them in jail for the weekend to pay a debt. And I just thought, if you can't handle the people in parish prison, you can't handle the people in the temporary jail. And I wrote columns about that, showed up at my first city council meeting in, I think it was 2015, killed the misdemeanor jail, and as a result, just got addicted, started showing up at city council meetings, school board meetings, airport board meetings, parks and recreation, anywhere where people were taking our tax dollars and doing nothing to help people with it. I showed up, and then I met my politicians, and I found out that most of them weren't that good. And I thought I could run and do a better job.
And that's a good way to get into politics, in my view. That's it. My wife is a state legislator here in Colorado. It's basically how she got involved. She started doing activism, meeting politicians, and realized, you know what, these people are not special, and sometimes they can be replaced. I guess just to give folks the context of Louisiana's election, it's a little bit different in that the Democratic primary is on November 8th, which is National Election Day, then the general election for the Senate seat in Louisiana on December 10th. So knowing that you still have a primary to face, tell us the state of that primary contest. How do you differentiate yourself from your other Democratic primary opponents?
Well, one, I differentiate myself by actually having ran for office and served our community in meaningful ways and have a base of support. I'm the only Democrat running that can say that they have a base of support that's shown up to vote for them before. We're the lead polling Democrat. We raise more money faster than any other Democrat in the race. John Kennedy, who's our senator, is polling at 51%. He's not overwhelmingly popular the way that people may think he is. And so what we need to do is keep him under 50 in order to create a runoff scenario. We're the campaign that has capacity to mobilize the base of the party. Louisiana's 34% black. The Democratic Party here in the state is 70% black. 30% of white voters in the state consistently vote for Democrats. So we believe we are the campaign most energized, most likely to be able to defeat John Kennedy by motivating the base of the party.
Now, you have made some headlines nationally with some of your ads. One ad shows you smoking weed. Another ad shows you burning a Confederate flag. I want to play a clip of that latter ad.
They said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But here in Louisiana and all over the South, Jim Crow never really left, and the remnants of the Confederacy remain."
So I want to ask you, just to go deeper on that, what do you mean by the remnants of the Confederacy remain in Louisiana?
So Louisiana is the second blackest state in America. We have 6 congressional districts. We should have 2 majority-minority districts. We only have 1. I ran in that congressional district in 2021. It's 10 parishes. We have parishes, not counties here. And it's extremely gerrymandered. All of the other districts are like blocks, and this one's kind of like a slither of a snake that goes from North Baton Rouge all the way to New Orleans East. It picks up a huge chunk of black voters in order to disenfranchise us from being able to get federal representation. That's one aspect of it. The same thing is happening in our state legislature. We have a supermajority Republican legislature in the House, almost the same in the Senate, even though Black folks and Democrats make up a huge portion of this state. We're underrepresented on our Supreme Court here. And what does that mean? That means when every policy decision is made in this state about resources that are allocated to solve problems, that Black people are disadvantaged in that conversation. And taxation without representation is about as un-American as you can be, right? And that's what we have. And it's not just a problem here in Louisiana. That's a problem in Mississippi. Mississippi is the blackest state in America. They're 38% Black. They have one congressman, Benny Thompson. They should have more than one. And in both of our states, there's not been a Black person elected statewide. In Louisiana, there's not been a Black person elected statewide since 1873. The first Black governor in U.S. history was P.B.S. Pinchback, and he ascended to the governorship here in Louisiana as the president of the state Senate. The lieutenant governor dies. He becomes the governor for 30 days, and then there's 100 years before Douglas Wilder becomes the governor of Virginia. There's only been 4 Black governors. 2 of them have been elected. 2 of them have risen by ascension. The other statewide offices, 11 Black U.S. senators. I think when we talk about the representation that minorities have had in this country, it's underwhelmingly delivered for the people.
I want to talk about the big news nationally because it does relate to your campaign. President Biden last week began, hopefully, the process of legalizing marijuana, or at least decriminalizing marijuana. He asked for instance, the HHS, the Health and Human Services Secretary, to begin the process of evaluating whether to deschedule the drug. There were also other parts of this where he said he was asking governors to pardon low-level marijuana offenses. As somebody who's been campaigning on criminal justice reform, campaigning on legalizing marijuana, as I mentioned, that ad that you did, what do you make of what the president did? Is it a step forward? Should he do more? What didn't he do that you'd want him to do?
I think the president made a positive step in the right direction. Of course, I would love to see him do more, but I'm keenly aware of who we're dealing with President Biden. I think that he is honoring the things that he said as a candidate. And that is what we as voters desire, right? That someone does the things that they say they're going to do when they're actually in office. I am seeking to get to the U.S. Senate to go help make sure that it gets done all the way. We need to deschedule cannabis. We need to make sure that we get safe banking in America. People that are in the cannabis business all over this country can't just put their money in the bank easily. It's a really dangerous process that we have for a lot of people that are in business. And it's an inequitable process for people who are still being incarcerated for it. You look at states like Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, where they are on cannabis is archaic. Louisiana is medicinally legal, and we just decriminalized. And I think that we're going to get to the point of recreational cannabis here soon, because 70% of voters in Louisiana believe that recreational cannabis should be legal. The real deal is, how long is the federal government going to allow people to be incarcerated for this? And if we say that we're serious about wanting this to be something that's resolved, the fastest way for us to do it is to deschedule it at the federal level and then put the pressure on states to do what they need to do to release all those that are incarcerated. David, I've got to say, Kevin Allen is a man who's in Angola Penitentiary right now, serving a life sentence for less than a gram of cannabis. He's been there since 2013. We spend $19,000 a year in Louisiana to incarcerate and $11,000 a year to educate. Your great state of Colorado is the 4th ranked education system in the country, and we have the 48th ranked education system in the country. I think that we're getting it wrong, and we don't have the investment dollars to get it done to help our children, and cannabis could help be a gateway to make sure that we can invest in our children.
There was a controversy that came up earlier in your campaign where James Carville, the Democratic strategist, Clinton Democratic strategist, who is from Louisiana, he was on TV. He had this to say about your campaign.
Does Gary have any chance? No. And I think Gary Chambers is an idiot. He's one of these kind of activists, left-wing activists from Baton Rouge.
So I think this touches on something that you've brought up, a bigger issue, which is the establishment of the Democratic Party. You've argued that the establishment is hostile to you and to other black candidates running statewide because black candidates haven't been elected statewide in Louisiana. What's your response to what Carville said? And give us a little bit of context for the larger argument you've been making about the Louisiana Democratic Party.
So one, I've got to start by saying that James Carville supported, I think, Terry McAuliffe in Virginia. They lost. He supported the guy who came in second in the Democratic primary in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, who's more progressive, is the nominee in Pennsylvania. I think if you look at the record of the types of candidates he supported, they're losing. That's number one. Number two, if we were wise as a party, we would get around the policies that galvanize the base of our party rather than trying to get this slim margin of moderates or independents that sway Republican, right? Donald Trump, whether we like him or not, taught a valuable lesson in politics. Go to your base and go all in. Right. And if you do that, you have the best odds at converting people because energy is transferable. The Democratic Party here has been and I won't say the entirety of the party. I will say the leadership of the party has been problematic for us from the very beginning. They said the chair of the party told me that she didn't think a black man could win. I did everything in our power to build a grassroots strong campaign that built a national platform. We were successful in that. Her candidate is polling in single digits and has been so all year long, no matter how much he's done. And a great guy, but just not able to beat John Kennedy. We ran a moderate Democrat in the election where Kennedy was elected, right? And that person, 28% of black voters in New Orleans showed up, 26% of black voters in Shreveport showed up, and 32% of black voters in Baton Rouge showed up. Those are the three largest cities in our state. If you can't turn out the black vote in those states, a Democrat can't win. We have a Democrat as our governor. People believe that he's a Democrat because he's elected because he's moderate. The truth is he's elected because we had crazy people running against him like John Kennedy, and that excited the base of the party, and we got behind him. I think that if we gave young people and real Democrats somebody to show up for, they'd show up for him.
Let's talk about the general election opponent if you win the primary, John Kennedy. John Kennedy seems to me he was a Democrat. He became a Republican, which has happened many times in the South. John Kennedy tries to come off as this sort of folksy, somewhat, I guess, Republican populist kind of candidate. Why do you think his numbers appear to be pretty weak in Louisiana, which has been a traditionally Republican state? What do you think the best arguments are, the most compelling arguments to voters about why voters should get rid of him?
One, he's been elected almost as long as I've been alive. He's polling at 51%. Usually a U.S. senator be over 60% if they're popular. He's not there. Kennedy used to be a pro-choice Democrat. Let me say that too, right? Now he's all the way pro-life, all of these things. And he switched to being a Republican when Obama ran for president. That's something that has to be pointed out because in 2004, he ran for a U.S. Senate as a Democrat when John Kerry was on the ticket for president. John Kennedy plays whatever role necessary to win an election. He voted against infrastructure dollars here in Louisiana. Infrastructure dollars aren't red, they aren't blue, they aren't black, they aren't white. Everybody uses the roads. And that's $6-7 billion of resources, jobs that don't come here. What's insulting about it is you vote against infrastructure dollars when we had just suffered a Hurricane Ida, and people in mostly Republican areas of our state, Houma, Louisiana, were without power for a month. Kennedy votes against infrastructure dollars. What do those infrastructure dollars do? They help us put those power lines underground so that the next time a hurricane comes, which we know we're going to have one, that we don't have to have people without power for a month. This is a guy who just does not care about the people of this state. That's my argument to people when I go out. The other thing is he spends a lot of time on TV making an ass of himself. He just made a commercial where he said, if you got a problem with the police, call a crackhead. That is not only not solution-based, it's insulting. And he consistently votes against things that would benefit the people of this state. The other thing is when you talk about being a pro-police guy and call a crackhead, but you voted to overturn the election of Joe Biden. He's the only senator on the ballot right now that voted to overturn the election. And where was his pro-police attitude to the cops who were being assaulted at the Capitol by Republicans who were storming the Capitol? I think he's a con artist, and I think he's a fraud. And I think that if we're in the opportunity to run against him in a head-to-head matchup, we're the best suited to expose that consistently. If we've got the resources to put the foolishness that John Kennedy does into the ads that we create and put that on TV, he's going home.
One last question for you about the themes of your own campaign. You're a proud Christian, which is highlighted on your campaign website. How do you see your faith being a strength of your campaign, especially in 2022, as the country seems to be more and more divided and where religion is so often used in politics, unfortunately, to divide rather than to unite?
I try to lead with love. That's first and foremost. Everything about my faith teaches me that God is love. And that if we want people to become believers of what we believe, that the way to get them is to love them in. Some people believe that you spend time judging people. I got my own sins to talk to God about when I get to heaven. I'm not worried about yours or anybody else's. And so that's kind of the philosophy I live with. My campaign slogan is a scripture. It's Isaiah 1:17, do good, seek justice, help the widow, the orphan, the oppressed, and the poor. We just keep do good and seek justice at the front of it, but it's a declaration. And every time somebody says it, they're quoting a scripture. For me, that's the Jesus I serve, the Jesus who cared about the poor, who cared about the sick. When I go to churches and I talk about Medicare for all, I say Jesus laid hands on the sick. That was Medicare for all. If it was good for Jesus, it's got to be good for us. And people get it, right? That at the end of the day, my faith also was a choice that I made at some point in my life. God didn't force me to be a Christian. I made that choice. And I think that in making that choice, I want to give everybody else the liberty to make whatever choices they want. And that's just the way that I lead. And if I love more people, hopefully at the end of my life, more people believe the things that I believe. That's the goal of discipleship. But in the goal of my elected service, it's to live a life that shows my faith. And I live in the South. You know, people at church every Sunday here in Louisiana. I did 5 churches yesterday, and all of those churches were full with people who were excited about being able to get out and vote for us. And so I think it's a strength. And I think that showing the way that I believe and carrying my faith the way that I do, hopefully gives people some comfort that everybody who's a believer isn't against them.
Gary Chambers is a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate in Louisiana. You can find his website, chambersforlouisiana.com. That's chambersforlouisiana.com. Or on Twitter at Gary Chambers Jr., and you can find him there. Gary Chambers, thank you so much for taking time with us. Thanks for running the aggressive campaign you're running, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, David.